Sci Access, May 11, 2024. 5 Strategies for Improving Outcomes in Neurodivergent Learners. Dr. Shannan Palma, Dr. Lena Furci.
Great. Hello, everybody. It's great to see all of you. My name is Lena Furci, and I am really excited to be here because I started in industry. I spent about 13 years in the tech industry, and there I did a lot of developing strategic technical direction, accessing market space. I led a business line in national security. Prior to that, my interests are in pharmaceutical sciences and investigating the research side of developing new drug inhibitors. And so I've made a big move about 6 years ago where I founded a nonprofit focused on computer science for girls preschool. And we've expanded all the way through that college range because we know that we are already losing girls in the STEM fields in that high school and college range. Her academy, as I mentioned, we have an audacious goal that is all girls in our nation graduate high school with the same competency in computer science as she does in math, art, English, and science. And a lot of that has to do with providing opportunities where they can build confidence and identity around doing all those fun things of being a creator and designer of technology.
And I am Dr. Shannan Palma. I am a white woman, middle-aged, black curly hair that's currently pulled back in a bun because I was working in my garden this morning before the conference. And I am the co-founder and co-executive director of the Autistic Self-Reliance Support Network and the founder of ITI Assistive Technologies, Inc. And until recently, I was vice president of continuing education at her academy. And Lena has been foundational support for inspiring all my other work and making it happen. I am a teacher who was late diagnosed autistic and ADHD, among other things, a computer science teacher through her academy, where I was. I spent 18 years in education, and I have training in disability studies and positive psychology and lived experiences with which I coach other educators on how to cultivate an inclusive classroom. I'm also actively involved in UX research around assistive technology for autistic and ADHD minds. So our slides are very simple. Most of them just say like introductions or 5 strategies for improving outcomes for neurodivergent learners. So you are not missing anything. Oh, that is not moving on here. Hold on. There we go. With those. But there is the first thing I want to talk about before we go into those strategies is what is neurodiversity. And I think Sci Access is probably the audience has now figured it out. But just in case you're popping in for this one, neurodiversity describes the infinite variation in neurocognitive functioning among humans. So what our slide says is, what is neurodiversity? People are different from each other. People's brains are different from each other. So basically, this is understood to be a form of human diversity that is subject to the same social dynamics as other forms of diversity. But there are, in terms of learning, things we can do, like very clear, tangible things we can do to help folks whose brains are a little bit different from the typical to learn and thrive in their work. So first up, we have Lena.
Yeah. Okay. So as Shannan mentioned, we have 5 strategies, and these are strategies. We've tried a lot of strategies in the classroom, and these are the 5 that we have found to be the most productive and to get the best outcome with our neurodivergent learners. So the first one is creating visual instructions. And what some of those examples of creating visual instructions include, if we have a project, creating an actual calendar or schedule of what that looks like for the project. And what that does is it helps classroom management And as you can see on our slides, we have some pictures where we provide some visual clues, or I should say cards, that kind of give one step before what the general instruction looks like. So what we're looking at here is we are teaching young kids in this particular case, or example that I'm talking to about Scratch. And it is a program, block-based, where they snap instructions together and something appears on the screen. Having these visual cards that you can see has some symbols and some words helps them to understand how those commands would be used in particular programming languages. Another way is, and this is one of our favorites, is a no talking lesson by the teacher. I mean, the whole period, no talking. And so we came across this one where we just really read the room. The room was very amped up and it was hard to settle everyone down. And the instructor for that class just started explaining through drawing on the board and providing visual cues of what the expectations of the students were for that particular lesson. Now, moving forward after that one that we did just impromptu, we would highly recommend that you kind of plan one out so that you understand what that might look like overall. But that was highly successful from the students' perspective as well as ours in getting command and control over the classroom and helping students be successful that day. Another one is we in computer science work with what we call physical components. And so it's not just programming and purely working on the computer. So we may have a robot and students get very excited about working with physical components. And for this example, I'll talk about working with a robot. What we've done is because students get excited to hold that robot or move that robot around and just be able to feel it, we provide them a starting point at which that robot should always start whenever they're going through the robotics lesson. So if we want a particular classroom to learn how to move forward, do a little wiggle shake, maybe spin around, we would have every single student have a specific starting point that all of them start from. That way the expectations are clear and it becomes more of a rigid scheduled expectation. What we also will do is we'll have that green go piece of tape where that robot starts. A fun piece is having the students predict where that robot will end. And so if we say move forward 3, they have to get an idea of what is 3. Is it 3 steps, 3 feet, 3 centimeters? And having them start to visualize and have that activity of putting a red dot down gives them a lot of context of what's happening in that particular lesson. Another one is a how-to video, which is made by the teacher. So we mentioned a fun one where there's no talking lesson. To mix things up a little bit, the teacher creates just a simple video, and that may be a little bit of writing on a mini whiteboard, and you just have the camera on top of that. And you don't have to be all ready and jazzed up to give a video. This video can just show your expectations through the whiteboard and then through your hands. And then what the teacher does with that is she will then upload that onto the learning management system. And what's great about that is that video is just a short piece of context of something that the child may, or many students you find keep asking you the same question. And you can say, go to your learning management system and I have a video of how to do that. And that allows them to replay what is expected of them to do. And they have a good idea of what that outcome looks like. And then another one is give an example in real time of what a prototype is. And so many times what we find when we work with teachers is that they will spend a lot of time outside of the classroom creating a fun prototype to give students a visual. What we have found is that giving a students an idea of what a prototype or good enough project is in your case is grabbing a piece of paper, grabbing a piece of cardboard. In this case, we were making handmade video game controllers. And I just took a piece of paper and just cut a circle and put some dots of where I expected. I made it as simple as possible. I did it in 45 seconds so that the students realized the major piece of that particular lesson was not making and crafting the physical piece, but how it tied making a video game controller that they coded a particular game, and that controller would then control the pieces of the game that they did. And so thinking about prototypes being way more simplified than what we currently provide to students just helps set the expectation of simplicity for all learners, but especially our neurodivergent learners. Okay. Anything else to add on that one, Shannan?
No, I think that's great. One thing I would add, oh, yes, you asked if I had anything to add. Yes, I have something to add. Oh, habit. And that is that we are focused right now on things that will help neurodivergent learners, but that doesn't mean, intersectionality. We're going to have neurodivergent, visually impaired, or blind learners as well. And so some of these will work better for some people than for others. And what you really have to do is work with the ones that are going to work best with your class, and really think about inclusivity so that you're not making anyone feel left out, or you're providing the same kind of support regardless of whether someone is multiply disabled or how their different abilities work together. So I will go into the second one, which is one of the ways that you could also work for blind or visually impaired learners, and that is connecting concepts to students' lived experiences. And this just take concepts from abstract to grounded. Some children struggle with metaphor. So be very clear when you're offering an analogy that these two things are similar. They have similarities, but they are not the same. Give them the framework. That's where a lot of the struggles with metaphor come from, is if they think that you're saying this and this are identical, and they're not. But if you just kind of frame it, this thing has similarities to this other thing, and then point out those comparisons explicitly. So for example, we're teaching computer science, and if I say, okay, brush your teeth. Brush your teeth is shorthand for a list of steps, right? And that's something that every child in the classroom is going to be able to understand conceptually, right? They have heard that if they have not done it themselves. Brush your teeth means go to the bathroom, open the right hand drawer, pick up your toothbrush with your dominant hand, or whatever assistive aids you need. But we don't say all of those steps every time. We just say we're going to brush our teeth. And sometimes in code, it's the same thing. You have to define and learn all the steps, and then you can name the steps with an activity or a function name. And then rather than referring to them by the name of, by every single step along the way, you can just say the name. You can say the shorthand, brush your teeth. And in code, that's a way to write more efficient code. And if we just explain functions, which is what I just said, right? Shorthand for a longer piece of code. If I explain that in all computer science terms, I'm going to lose at least half the class, but especially with elementary schoolers. But if I explain it in terms of brushing your teeth and make clear what are the similarities, and the similarity is the structure. The similarity is not the place. The similarity is not the physicality. The similarity is the structure of a shorthand. Just making that really clear will help with that grounding of the concept in students' lived experience. Also, just recognizing that the examples have to be relevant to the student's age in order to, and their actual lives in order to connect. So here we've got a picture of four, these were kindergartners, I believe, 5, 6, 4 girls standing in a row. And what they were doing was they were about to be the robot. So when they were going to act out the commands prior to having the robot actually act out the commands. And so what we did is we were trying to teach the starting point, like that you have to, if you want to end up in the same place every time with a robot, you've got to make sure that the robot starts in the same place every time. So when we're dealing with older kids, a lot of times we'll use the analogy of places everyone. And places everyone is a theater term, and it means reset the scene. It means go back to wherever your starting spot was. But with the little ones, they don't know what that means. That's one of the things we figured out pretty quickly. They don't know what that means. So instead, we talk about, where do you start your day? And most of the time they start their day in their beds. So connecting it not just to a sort of general lived experience or set of analogies that you have, but also thinking about the age and the situation of those students and the context you're in, and saying, okay, most of the time you wake up in the morning, where are you? You're in your bed. With the 5-6s, they might also be in their parents' bed. But you're going to have a different result based on which starting point you're in. So just kind of connecting everything to where they are and really grounding it in the what is appropriate for them will help them grasp these concepts in a more concrete way. And then Lena, would you like to take strategy 3?
Yeah, strategy 3 is incorporating movement into learning. So when you think about working with kids, how can you get your point across of what you want them to master from their lesson or project or whatever they're working with you on through movement? So an example that we do in the classroom is, say we have some middle school students that are learning to code in text-based for the very first time. They may be very overwhelmed by looking at a different type of language, which would be a computer science language. And we break that down into taking what that command looks like on the screen and then having them act out what that command is. So it may be something as simple as move forward. Then we would show that move forward of what would need to be typed within a particular program line, and then we would have them do it. Maybe it's spin around, maybe it's shake. Once they get all those individual components together, then we have them put it into one long string of commands. And so they will then act out, move forward, jump, touch the window, go back to your starting point, as Shannan mentioned, that places everyone. And so that really helps them make a connection to that physical movement, and they can act out what they've created or what they're about to do. All right, next strategy.
Actually, we have one. I think this is going to show it.
Oh,
okay. We've got the little video. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. So here we're showing them what X and Y coordinates are. And so you can see that Y coordinate goes up and down, X goes right to left. And so they're switching right to left. And then, yeah. And then that's helping them understand when they're looking at a screen, particular canvas, what are XY coordinates? And they pick it up pretty fast. We've been able to teach XY coordinates through the physical movement at a much lower grade level than what national standards provide.
So strategy 4 is to create a sensory environment conducive to learning. And this is one of those things, and I'm going to go ahead to the next slide, which has some images. And then I'm going to describe them. Now, one of them is plants. And there have been lots of studies that show that the incorporation of plant life into a space has a really calming effect on the nervous system. And a lot of neurodivergent folks, we have really overactive nervous systems that get dysregulated very easily. I always refer to it as like I have a wonky knee. I can do everything right to protect my knee keep it from sliding out of joint. But sometimes I'm just going to wake up and it's going to be out of joint. And in that case, it's also the same with my nervous system. Sometimes it's just going haywire and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to live with it. So one of the things that can be really helpful in ensuring a more consistent learning experience is if you pay a lot of attention to the sensory environment in which you're teaching. So overhead lighting versus soft diffuse lighting. Talking to various students to figure out if, even if you can't hear it, do the lights hum? I can almost always hear the lights. It's very, very distracting. Covering up busy visual spaces with a solid cover. So another picture we have here is very, very messy shelves. They're actually quite well organized. They are, but still, there's a lot of visual clutter. And this is an elementary school classroom. So the kids will get very distracted. They'll see the markers, they'll see glue, they'll see cardboard. They'll be like, what does that say? And they'll be looking at the labels. So for this room, we hung in front of those shelves and we just pull the curtains shut. And they don't need to worry about what's there and they don't need to be distracted by it. And I have behind me a room divider to kind of do the same because I am giving this presentation from my office, which doubles as my kids' art room. So there's lots and lots of color behind me as well. For sound, that can be another one. Allow sensory seeking students to play music over headphones. Allow sensory avoidant students to wear noise canceling headphones. Just be aware of ambient noise in the room and how it may affect students' concentration. So the sound of the AC, sound of the electric, sound of the appliances. I frequently, before I knew I was autistic, would tell people I was hard of hearing because I couldn't understand what they were saying to me because there was too much other noise in the room. And I didn't know why I couldn't understand them. I thought it must be something with my hearing, but it was actually how my brain is processing the noise. So I was functionally hard of hearing, but it was a sensory issue that could be mitigated with canceling out certain sounds. So I have noise canceling headphones or earbuds in pretty much 24/7 now. Movement is another piece of that, and that is just make sure you're allowing students who need to move to stand at their spot. And just put those kids in the back so that they're not distracting the others. I am never still. I am always moving. I have a wobble stool that swivels and I am rocking back and forth if you can't see me. Watch for patterns in how kids are moving or squirming. If a child does the same thing repeatedly, especially if they do it even after you've told them not to, they just keep doing it and you know they're not doing it on purpose. That's not their personality. They're likely trying to fill a sensory need. So look at what they're doing, notice patterns, and is there a safer or less distracting way to fill that same need? Because they're not going to be able to concentrate until it's met, and you may have disruption in the classroom as well. And then finally, just be really aware of accumulated dysregulation. Consider the day as a whole. Like, was there a fire drill first thing? They always do those first thing in the morning. Terrible. Ruins my concentration all day long. But have they just come from music or recess? Was there a lockdown on campus? If you've got older students, was there a snow delay? Anything like that. And be aware that that is going to change how they show up in the classroom. And Lena, would you like to do strategy 5?
Yes. Strategy 5 is helping students transition between tasks. When we think about students' day, they are transitioning almost every hour, or they will have at least 3 to 4 transitions by the morning time. By the end of the morning, they will continue to have transitions throughout the day, and that can just be very, very disruptive. And so having simple things like timers, whether it's a physical or digital or something that's put on the screen, helps them have a great idea of how much time they have left. In addition to that, transition warnings are great, giving them and knowing your class, knowing your student, who's in there. what that warning looks like. Some of my classrooms, I have to give them a 5-minute warning and start to shut them down before that timer goes off a little bit. Others, I know that they know that once I say 2 minutes, they're in their mind thinking of, okay, I need to find a stopping point. But it is a signal for them to say, okay, what I'm doing right now, I need to find my stopping point, not exactly what my teacher is expecting of me or my peer who's near me, but it helps them understand, okay, I need to find my stopping point so that I feel productive and content with what I did in that moment. Another one with younger kids that we do is kids really can move through different activities, some quicker and some slower. That doesn't mean they're not understanding or picking up the content faster or slower. It just may also mean their interest in what they're doing as well. And so because of that, we may have some students who are working through something really fast, but want to continue on and be leveled up, and they don't want to stop, or they maybe have done enough from the day, depending on when they come to us during the day, especially end of the day, is we have them bring what's called a DEAR. It is a DEAR, drop everything and read book, because some may move very quickly through what the requirements of our project is, and they're done. Like I made those requirements, it took everything out of me, and I need to feel that completion and move on. And so that DEAR book helps them through that transition. And then with our younger students too, they transition so much more than the older students. So we do what's called a brain dance, where there's movement and touching of their bodies, their head, and their mind, so that they can reconnect their mind back to how their bodies are moving. And so that's just a fun activity. So you can Google brain dance, and you'll find some great options and examples through that. Okay, so Shannan, we've hit our 5 strategies. I love them all. Yeah, they're fun.
Questions?
Yeah.
Oh, my email address here is shannan@autisticselfreliance.org now. Well, we have 2 questions in the chat. Rick said, not only am I blind, but due to another cognitive impairment I have, how could I be taught abstract things just like algebra, calculus, geometry, quadratic equations, and or trigonometry? I'm not a math teacher, so I don't have one off the top of my head for some of those, but I am a woodworker. And so I would say for geometry, just tactile things and doing it through touch as much as possible. That's certainly what helped me to figure out the relationships between all of the different things, was using my body. So that's strategy 2, or strategy 3, I guess. Lena, do you have anything?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as much of that tactile piece is really important.
And then Melinda asks, thank you for the talk. Do you notice any differences in how neurodivergent teachers approach their planning? For example, I have ADHD, and I've always practiced explaining my metaphors without realizing it was a neurodivergent strategy. Me too. Yeah. Most of the best strategies that we have found have come from neurodivergent teachers. So like the timers, that's something that one of our teachers was using constantly, and she has self-diagnosed ADHD. She's been teaching for 30 years. That's how she stays on track. That's just how she does it. And she also did all of the visual, was the person who figured out visual instructions and the cards, and is constantly tinkering with those. And I hope you cannot hear, but I do have small children in my home, and they are wrestling upstairs. Yeah.
I would add too, for her to be successful in the classroom, at the start of her day, she will set alarms. So she will probably have 16 alarms. I mean, it's a lot of alarms, but they help her remember through the day, so that she doesn't have to remember through the day. So that takes one thing off of her mind, that she can rely on the timer on her phone that's going to remember her that she has recess, that she has to get, just certain things and transitions that help her. So she has all of her transitions through the day set up through there. Another piece that helps her that I've learned a lot from is setting up worksheets for students. And so that helps to make sure that sometimes when we're starting new concepts, we're like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot this piece to tell them. And it was like one of the most important pieces. And now I have to wait until the next time, which is a whole nother class. And so she really relies on just worksheets. And those worksheets can be as big as a quarter piece of paper, or they can be a half a piece of paper. But if there's some important pieces that she wants to make sure that they understand or they master, she will break that lesson down into a worksheet or something just very simple.
And Nathaniel, I think that also goes to your question, which was, do you have good strategies to help neurodivergent teachers manage helping neurodivergent learners? Many of these strategies, like giving warnings, being aware of learners in different headspaces and helping them provide extra cognitive and attention load for the instructor. And so I find it hard to implement. I'm right there with you. Actually, the first time I did a no talking lesson was because I didn't know how else I was going to teach that afternoon. I was so overloaded and I could not concentrate, and I could not process auditory information. I wasn't like, I'd just stare at you and could not comprehend what you were trying to tell me. And I knew that the students were going to pick up on this and it was going to be bad. So I said, we're going to practice other modes of communication today. And it worked with this particular group of students that we could do writing or gesturing and figure it out. So since that worked with this group, that is what we did. And I was much better able to communicate with them, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. I wouldn't do it all the time.
A lot, didn't they? They accomplished a lot.
It was great. It was really, really great. But think about the things you need and figure out how you can meet your needs better. That's one of the things I've learned. Like sometimes I can't handle noise in the classroom. So how do I do that? And then we have no talking lessons or silent classroom. Sometimes we just get up and we move around, things like that. So think about how you're meeting your needs and just extend that to students and invite them to tell you what they need as well. And finally,
can I add one more thing to that that has helped us as a team and working with teachers is when we are meeting, whether it's to talk about students, it's talk about a new lesson, or to debrief, we start it by asking, like, what do you need to be successful for this meeting? Because that can change, and we have found that when you get a regular cadence doing that, sometimes whatever that is, you get it, and then you can be focused, and it takes, again, another heavy capacity on your mind. It kind of frees it, and it helps a lot. And so we've been able to be more open as a team and talk about, okay, what do you need right now so that this session, this meeting, this lesson in the classroom can be successful.
We are at time. There's one final question. And it was, what are the benefits of having neurodiverse students in the classroom? And I mean, for me, that one's obvious. Like it's the same as there is for any kind of diversity. Like the more thought diversity you have in the room, the more you are troubleshooting early on, right? The more that you are figuring out innovative solutions, and the more that you are figuring out how to create, like, that true universal design requires that you have lots of different minds and lots of different bodies in the room, and that you're thinking about how whatever solution you're coming up with or whatever problem you're trying to solve in general impacts all of them.
And it's so fun.
Yes.
It's so fun.
Yes.
You have that. Yeah.
SciAccess. Learn more at www.sciaccess.org.